3/4 of our planet is covered in water. The great oceans are sparsely populated, equivalent to huge deserts. Creatures of the deep must travel far in search of food. But here and there, submerged mountain peaks break through the waves. Remote islands in a desert sea. Ocean oases. Our ocean tides are largely controlled by the gravitational pull of the moon. It's over 1/4 of a century since man first left footprints on the surface. As we venture even further into space, there are still places on our planet which remain virtually undiscovered. In the waters around Papua New Guinea, there are more fish, coral and marine species than anywhere in the world. A submarine Garden of Eden. Butterfly fish cascade down the coral walls. Antheas dance among the staghorn coral. A kaleidoscope of color in the delicate coral branches. These corals look like plants and trees, but in fact they're animals that grow into massive colonies. Only because the sun's rays penetrate the clear water can the corals build and grow, attracting fish in their thousands to this underwater oasis. The powerhouse in our universe is the sun, responsible for all life on Earth. Microscopic algae living among sea anemones use the sun's energy to make food. There are over 1,000 species of sea anemone, but only a few are host to anemone fishes, more commonly known as clownfish. Pink anemone fish live in a species that grows on exposed reefs where currents and surge are strong. Sea anemones are related to coral and jellyfish, and like them, use stinging tentacles for defense and to capture prey. The largest populations of these host anemones live in the sunlit waters of Papua New Guinea. There are well over 300 species of anemone fish. These are orange fins living in a short tentacled anemone. Clownfish never live on their own. Certain species like to live in particular types of anemone. It's still not certain how they survive among the stinging tentacles, but one theory is that by rubbing themselves on the anemone, the fish coat themselves with the anemone's own mucus, making them immune to the stings. Some anemones have bulbous tentacles and prefer the more sheltered spots among the corals. Others are long and thin, armed with harpoon-like stinging capsules that shoot out on contact. They can be quite painful to a human and spell death to a small fish. However, the clownfish are quite safe. One of the largest is the spine-cheeked clownfish, growing up to 20 centimeters long. The females have grey stripes and are larger than the males, which are brighter in color with white stripes. The spines can be clearly seen on this one. On a sandy area in faster current live the clown anemone fish, their markings just like a circus clown's makeup. The anemone is the fish's home, and they rarely stray far from it. a family of rare saddleback clownfish seem to have outgrown their small residence. Out in the open, the anemone seems more vulnerable too, but if necessary, the Haddon's anemone can close up completely and even bury itself in the sand. The tentacles are sticky to the touch. A pair of anemone crabs clean it in return for a meal. Feeding on scraps from around the anemone's mouth is all part of this special symbiotic relationship, and studies have proved that anemones that host other species are much healthier than those living alone. Cleaner shrimps seem to be recognized by the anemone, which touches the shrimp as it cleans each tentacle. Like stamens on a flower, this anemone grows at the center of a huge cabbage coral. Other species live out in the open and are able to bunch themselves up into a ball if threatened. They hold onto the reef with a sucker-like foot. When completely closed, it's a tight squeeze for the residents. All sea anemones that are host to clownfish need sunlight to survive. They spread themselves out like solar panels, letting the sunlight reach the algae which live in their tissues. Just like plants on land, sea anemones need water and sunshine. At these islands of Eden, the conditions are perfect for them to thrive. In Kimbe Bay, to the east of Papua New Guinea, small coral islands rise from the ocean floor. These are the breeding grounds for the hawksbill turtle, which rest in the underwater caves in the reef. The hawksbill is now a protected species, but it was almost hunted to extinction for its shell, the original tortoise shell. Since the ban on killing them, their numbers have gradually increased. They cruise the reef, feeding on fish, mollusks, crustaceans, and sea plants. Turtles are reptiles and have to breathe about every half hour. With nostrils at the tip of their beak-like snout, they can breathe easily when they're at the surface. The lower part of their shell expands to let them fill their lungs for another long dive. Another reptile, the saltwater crocodile, was hunted for its skin. It usually lives in the mangrove swamps and estuaries, but it can also travel across quite large stretches of open water. It's the largest of the crocodiles and grows up to 5 meters long. Young males migrate to establish their new territories, and like the turtle, the females lay their eggs in a nest above the high tide line. At night, the waters surrounding these islands are populated by mysterious creatures of every shape and size. Few are stranger than the salp. It makes its own electricity and attracts prey with a display of alluring lights. The ocean teems with life and shimmers with phosphorescence. The octopus is a night hunter and a master of disguise. It instinctively changes color and even its texture to match the reef, essential for survival. But if a white-tip shark is searching for a meal, it uses its acute sense of smell to find prey. The octopus retreats into a convenient hole until danger passes. It even blocks the entrance with some broken coral branches. A hermit crab carries its defense on its back, while parrotfish trust in a transparent sleeping bag which they inflate around themselves, a cocoon of mucus which acts as a barrier, putting predators off the scent. But it's not all eat or be eaten. A pufferfish joins a goatfish sleeping under a rotten tree branch. It's a shelter for the night while the hunters stalk the dark waters. Sleeping on the sand, the mapper pufferfish changes color and pattern to match its background. The cuttlefish, not a fish at all but a mollusk, rivals the octopus in its ability to mimic whatever background it finds itself on, even simulating the rough, spiky texture of coral. In the confined spaces of the reef, they maneuver using small, frilly fins around the body, but for emergency, they can squirt out a stream of water. On the sandy seabed, the cuttlefish looks like a different species, its smooth body shimmering from light-reflecting crystals in the skin. Cuttlefish have 10 tentacles arranged in pairs around their mouth. One pair, longer than the rest, is for catching prey. It feeds on small fish and crustaceans, changing color not only for disguise, but at the sight of food or a potential mate. Very complex color changes can happen when 2 or more cuttlefish are together, suggesting that this is a form of communication. Although they're mainly night hunters, cuttlefish do come out in the daytime, swimming just below the surface, where the water is warmest and has most oxygen. It's also where the bright sunlight encourages plants and corals to grow, and they provide the environment for other life forms. A black and white patterned nudibranch grazes the coral for algae. The mantis shrimp emerges from its home. It feels the current for food particles. Tunicates or sea squirts lock onto the reef and filter their food from the water. Other life forms use their many tentacled arms to grasp at plankton. These fern-like tentacles belong to a crinoid, an animal attached to the seabed or coral by a stalk. Sometimes, as they grow older, they lose their stalk and swim about freely, when they're known as feather stars. They can use their long arms to pull themselves along the sandy bottom. Today, only a few hundred crinoid species survive, but thousands more have been found as fossils. It may appear rather helpless, but the leaf fish, a type of scorpionfish, can look after itself. It simply sucks in any passing prey. Well matched to its surroundings, it has no swim bladder and drifts about on the currents. Like the broken twigs of some plant, harlequin ghost pipefish seldom leave the cover of crinoids or coral. They're relatives of the seahorses. The female is almost 5 times the size of the male, which only grows to 4 centimeters. Some fish will do anything to be different, even standing on their heads. In this position, razorfish nibble at food and stay camouflaged among the coral stems. The crocodile-like head and big mouth of the carpet flathead allow it to catch larger fish like snapper and bream. A slow-moving fish, for defense, it relies on its spiny dorsal fins. Most of the reef dwellers pose no threat to man, but the Titan triggerfish, nearly a meter long, is extremely territorial and has been known to attack divers. This relative of the moray eel changes sex and color throughout its life. The male blue ribbon eel may later develop into a yellow female. Octopus, when pairing up for mating, go through elaborate displays of color and pattern changing. Most of their life is spent in hiding, staying in one area of the reef. Generally, they're slow movers, but are capable of speed when necessary. In courtship, the male approaches the female carefully, just close enough to stretch out an arm and caress her. They're shy and intelligent creatures. If disturbed, they retreat and wait for another opportunity. The waters surrounding these coral shallows drop off deep. Near the bottom, there's a different kind of life. Huge barrel sponges smoke with spawn, which is carried off on the current to set up colonies elsewhere. It's a strange world where simple animals build skeletons of all shapes, sizes, and colors. Gorgonian fan corals like it deep with plenty of current. Their branching bodies reach out to capture the life-giving plankton. These tree-like corals provide shelter and food for smaller fish like purple antheas. Young eel catfish suck food off the branches. The long-nosed hawkfish lives on Gorgonian coral and is well color-matched. Small butterfly fish skillfully feed among the stinging polyps of soft coral, which grow like miniature forests. But it's the hard corals that are the reef builders, new life continually building on the skeletons of others. The feathery arms of hydroids cling onto the fans, feeding on algae and plankton. Higher up this sea mountain, we enter a sunlit world. Whip coral grows up to 2 meters high. Near the top, life-giving sunlight filters down on the many hundreds of different corals and sponges. On the steep walls, a maze of fire coral. If danger threatens, the nooks and crannies of the coral reef are used by the smaller fish to hide in. Some corals are flat and folded. Others are sharp and pointed, like the staghorn coral. Many hundreds of species live in these communities. Like flocks of birds, demoiselles and chromis dart and dance above the branches. Butterfly fish like the steep outer walls. When there are this many of them, it's a sign that the reef is in good health, with unpolluted waters and a plentiful food supply. Other fish feed on the coral polyps at the top of the wall. A rich crop of cabbage coral spreads its leaf-like body, taking advantage of the sun's rays. The steep-headed parrotfish has a beak-shaped mouth, which is used to scrape algae from the coral and bite off chunks of live coral. The coral grouper feeds on small fish and crustaceans. It's not likely to go hungry here in these rich coral gardens, where black and yellow crinoids wave in the current. They provide good cover for the smaller reef dwellers. A blue surgeonfish harvests algae from the fine branches of whip coral. In just a few feet of water, the sheer number and variety of fish is living proof that this really is an underwater Garden of Eden. Although 70% of the world's surface is covered by water, most marine life is found in the shallow areas around coasts and islands. In this part of the Western Pacific, the coral reefs are home to over 3,000 marine species. In the deeper water surrounding the coral islands are the visitors to these shores. Massive shoals of big-eyed trevally move from reef to reef in search of smaller fish, which they drive into a tight ball before attacking. When this species isn't hunting, it often makes one schooling formation after another, sometimes swimming near the surface, at other times rising up from the deep. They're not the only species found in great numbers. Blackfin barracuda, over 1 meter long, hang in the current just off the reef wall. Their streamlined body and powerful tail make them fast swimmers. But despite their reputation, attacks on divers are very rare. They're waiting for dusk to fall before they go in search of prey. Smaller species swim in schools of several hundred, but larger ones are solitary. Like some tuna, who also roam the oceans alone, they come in from the deep to feed on small fish at these ocean oases. Batfish are solitary when they're young, but adults come together and swim in schools. If they're threatened, they often swim close to the bottom, lying on their sides. They patrol the outer reefs in search of jellyfish and plankton. Without these remote islands, there would be fewer reef dwellers. And without them, many deep-sea fish would find it difficult to survive. The world needs these ocean oases of life. Stepping stones in the vast, empty oceans.